Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Tea and Trails podcast. Thanks to Outdoor Active, Vila Forte, Silver, Active Root, the Centurion Running Store, Protein Rebel, and SportsShoes.com for supporting our community. For the price of a coffee tea, you can unlock some great perks that will help take the sting out of sometimes an expensive sport. Last but not least, thanks to all our Patreons who dig deep every month and literally keep the lights hot and the mics on. Go over to Patreon, sign up or check it out, and check out all our amazing deals.
I've got some Dex Shell compression socks in my basket on the Centurion Running Store. I've just not pressed buy yet.
I did not know where that one was going. I was like, Gary, you realise we're recording a podcast and you're still doing the hour Twitter before.
We've had loads of sock chat and foot care chat and everything. So I thought, right, let's
do it with the Dex Shells.
Well, I don't know. Will I need
logo for a t-shirt? Don't use a Dex Shell as a form of contraception if you think that that's what I was hinting at.
Well, we have got a busy episode 15, the usual catch up with Brew with the coaches, tales from the trails, and our Protein Rebel competition winners are announced, and we're joined by race doctor Rebecca Cam. I hope we all don't need race doctors, but it's awesome to know that these people...
You're going off on tangents today. I was like, what's he going to say? I hope we don't all need... What's he going to say? Yes, that was funny, our chat, because I've had a lot of contact with race doctors in the various... and you've had none. So basically, I'm saying I'm a lot tougher than you because... or stupider.
I think I just tough it out, Eddie.
I tell you who make a lot of fuss is Ironman athletes, because I thought of this, but she was talking, and I'm always really aware I don't want to constantly interrupt and go, because when you finish an Ironman, you go straight into the medical tent. Everybody goes into the medical tent, and there's people they have beds, you lie down, and most people are put on grips.
Oh, wow. I wonder what sport is the most needy, if there's any data.
Yeah, well, that's so needy, because actually, an Ironman is like... It can be a varying length, obviously, depending on how quickly you do it. And you are pretty ruined by the end. But I would actually say the damage of a 100-mile run is probably more acute than an Ironman. Bryn would always rate my Ironman success by how long I was in the medical tent. Because you would never allow your support crew in there. They would have to wait the other side until you come out. I think my best one was when I just walked straight through. It's like, you've made it. Not need medical intervention.
I love it. We were both a bit flat last week, Eddie. I'm feeling a little bit better, but what about you?
It wasn't good. And I know I had we recorded that podcast and we were both like, Wah! And then the whole of my week just went blah. And I don't know if people can relate to this, but once the week goes wrong, especially at the start of the week, I could not get a grip back on myself or on the week. Everything was just...
The wheels came off.
The wheels came off. And I'm a real... routine person. That's the way I manage 3 children who all have a lot of activities, a lot of things going on, plus my job, plus all my training, plus everything that involves the mental load of all of that. Is that it's a tight ship. There isn't a lot of, and so when one thing goes wrong, it's like the Skittle Alley and everything just falls down. It
destroys my week.
It destroyed my week. And then I couldn't pull it back, and I sort of gave up trying to pull it back, and things just went to pot. So I had a sick child. I had really bad weather, lots of changes. Kids had ski race after ski race after ski race, which for me is a 6 a.m. start every morning to be up cooking there because lunches and getting all the kit and getting tired children. It was a lot, and half of them were sick. Then I got sick. It was all too much for me. I just let it. By Saturday, I just let it go. I was like, this week is just done.
I tried to send you a supportive text, but you're like, whatever.
Oh, you were like, it's a rest. It's good for you. Whatever. So I still managed to do training deets 6 by 5 minutes uphill. Really enjoyed that. And I did a long jog down in between them, mainly because the snow stopped play. So I just ran from where the ice in the corner was up to the snow line. It happened to be about 5 minutes. Jog down. I thought quite good conditioning to do the longer jog down. Really enjoyed that. Relived. I sent Jason Cavill a little message saying, back on my spine hill, back doing my hill reps. reliving happier times. And then I had sick children. So then I had to be a bit creative with my training and look at ways that I could train without killing myself. I go on my treadmill, but my treadmill incites a session rather than an easy run. It incites me to run faster. It like talks to me going, you don't want to jog. Let's get that heart rate up.
Just stick like Netflix on or something and just go for a little hour jog.
Eddie has no control. I did 6 by 3 minutes on the treadmill, a little bit of speed coming back in, and I had to bin my long run day, which was meant to be on Saturday, because I actually felt really ill. Not often I bin sessions because I do feel really ill, but when I feel sick, I felt I couldn't even breathe. And I'm going to call my long run 90 minutes.
Hey, that's long enough.
It's long enough. So I got some sessions ticked off. The week happened, and then Sunday I was like, come on, Eddie, pull yourself together. As I say, control the controllables. What can you do? I couldn't really go out anywhere. So I was like, right, I'm going to get myself sorted. I did a lot of admin. I cleaned the house. I even did like the mirrors and like pulled stuff out from, I even went under the
Does Bryn go around and inspect? Does he dust?
Bryn could not care less if the house was never clean or tidy. He just wants the fridge to be filled. Yeah. I was like, I felt better. I was like, right, can't go running. So let's clean. So that's done. That's ticked. Mirrors are clean under the beds. I didn't go deep right to the back of the beds because I could see all sorts of, those little Christmas knickknacks still there, probably an old bit of chocolate.
How's all your nutrition though? Any mice help themselves to you when you've opened the cupboards?
We had no mice. We had no mice at the end of the summer. And they always say, I think I've said this on the podcast before, that the mice come in when it's going to be a really good winter. And we had so many mice. Do you remember Cheer Charge Gate?
Yeah.
Blackjack. So we had no mice. We've had no mice for months, and we've had no winter. We've had no snow. So it is true. And I'm still my halo could not be shinier. Through all the crap show of last week, the yoga continued. Okay, there was one where she goes, find your shavasana. Is that it? Is that the right word, yogis? And you lie on the mat and
find
you breathe.
What, sorry, I missed it.
I don't know what it is. I just sort of, I don't know what the word was.
I wasn't setting you up. I literally didn't know what you said.
It's at the end, you meant to do this lying down with your arms out. And normally by then I'm like, yep, done. I'm out of here. And it was about 10 minutes. And I was like, didn't have time for that. Sorry, I don't have time for lying around breathing. No Diet Coke has still crossed my lips. And I've promised myself, though this isn't anything to
I've got no Diet Coke this week, actually, either, to tease you.
No, I told people about that, and they thought, that's not funny, that's cruel. That's not funny, that's cruel.
Nasty piece of work, that Gary.
Nasty piece of work, that Gary. I wouldn't go round his house again. And I promised myself this week I will get back on my bike. I keep saying every week, come on, Eddie. I don't really like running twice in a day. Sometimes I have to because I've got the dogs, and it's just easier, isn't it, to get the dogs. If you've got to walk for 30 minutes, you might as well run.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Especially if you've got a GSP that's a T-Rex and needs a heavy amount of running. Rubbish week, but I've turned it around now, Gary. I'm not having that anymore. I'm not having any more sick children, loads of stuff to do. I'm focusing on me. But we all know that's a lie because I'm a mother. And so you always come last down the food chain.
That's the plan.
I'm just going to be a bit more organized and not let things slip and get out of control.
But I think you're right. I don't, if it wasn't for Rex, I probably wouldn't double run half as much as I do. And I think we probably both got enough mileage in over the years that, we don't need to from probably a fitness point of view. But I wonder actually from a fitness point of view, obviously the more you run and the different sessions you do will improve your speed, your endurance and things like that. But how much fitter do you get? Do you only need to do really 20 minutes a day?
I know. I wonder that. And like, what's the purpose? Like, I'd like some scientific evidence of, because everyone's training is so different. And I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with this last week too, when I was really sad and I couldn't get out. If you look at everybody's training at a start line, everyone will have got there in a different way.
Yeah.
So no right way. I often think people look at me and think, what's she doing? Because, and people I think feel that as well, that they feel like, oh, people don't, you see Strava, you see Instagram, and you think, but why are they doing that? Why you don't ever get the full picture of what people are doing and how they're managing it. So basically, we should never judge what other people are doing, but also there's no right or wrong way to skin a rabbit.
I religiously follow this Garmin plan, and that did work for me. I noticed a big breakthrough when I was following other off-the-shelf training plans. But maybe my body's moved on and I'm not getting the most out of this Garmin plan now. So you even change as an athlete. Yeah, it's really interesting, but we do see it quite often when we get athletes on the show and we chat to them about their training. It's vastly different from I just do what I fancy doing to like Ellis Bland. I think pretty much followed a marathon training plan, but obviously with a bit more focus on hills. So yeah, really, really interesting. But my week, much better actually compared to last week. But I'm in the middle. It might actually happen mid-show, but I'm in the middle of trying to rescue a bird.
All Gary can talk about all morning. And actually, it's true because I've actually heard the bird squawking.
Have you heard it?
It sounded like a parrot.
It's a crow, got a black beak. So, and its mate is on the top of the chimney outside waiting for him. So it's quite sad. Yeah. You know, I was thinking, what the hell? How am I going to get rid of this? And then I looked kind of stage right, and there was two little kids fishing nets. So I've got those at the ready. But anytime I go near it, it just wants to go back up the chimney. And I think as it's getting tired, it's coming down and down. So I put some nuts out just to give it something.
Spicy Mexican chili.
Yeah. So Rex is locked away. I'm over here. Hopefully it just chills out enough to come out of the chimney, and then it's easier for it to get out of the front door as opposed to back up the chimney. That's the plan. But yeah,
one of you is going to have to stand in front of the chimney when it comes out to stop it going back up, like the barrier, and just take the hit. So whoever's like the bravest bird person. And
well, I know you didn't want to, so I'm on my back, shuffling to the chimney, looking up with my head torch, and filthy, and it's pooing as well because it's stressed out, and I really didn't know what I was going to be greeted with, but I'm glad it's alive for now, so fingers crossed. So yeah, moving on, running chat.
Bird was much more interesting than what we're about to listen to now. Come on.
But I was lucky Lisa was off last week and we went for a run together, which was nice. But yeah, anyone who in the northeast, at least last Monday, we had a real just heavy rain and freezing cold. So although it was nice to share some miles with Lisa, it wasn't nice to be out in that weather, and my enthusiasm waned pretty quick. Neil and I did a fartlek session on Tuesday, which was nice, just in the Dean. It's pretty awesome actually, the Dean, without doing much work. You can really get some good elevation in there, and it doesn't take like I think even on Saturday or Friday, sorry, we did almost 10 miles. We've got 3,000 feet, so it's pretty good. Wednesday, oh god, I'm even breaking it down to days. Wednesday was easy miles too.
Oh no, we're only halfway through. Keep going.
Thursday, it was supposed to be 10 times 400, but I upped it to 12 times 400.
Oh, that is a dangerous game to play.
And it was effort based. I'm deliberately not looking at pace at the moment. I'm giving myself a bit of grace. Those numbers, I'm not enjoying seeing them, so I've kind of flipped to the heart rate. That's the evidence that I need when I'm running. And what is nice, so there's a mixture of abilities in the group. You'll know this when you're doing say 400 on a track, you know where the end is, or any distance. But when you're doing it on the streets or trails, you don't know where the end is. So psychologically, it's quite painful. You're like begging your watch to beep when that 400 comes.
Oh, I see. You don't use the same. I would use the same bit each time.
No, yeah. This is just like, it was about a 5K figure of it that we use.
Oh, that would drive me mad because I'd keep looking.
What you need is a few fast people in front of you. And then when they stop, excellent, there's about 20 meters to go. So that was quite nice.
It's hard for me to find people that are faster than me over 400 meters. Only the whole of the population pretty much now.
Friday easy, which was nice too. And then Saturday, a long hilly run. It wasn't too long though, but I think we 2.25 hours we were out. So yeah, time on feet was good, about 3,000 feet of elevation. Sunday, because I'm a mileage junkie, I rounded up to 80 miles. And I think I got about 11,000 feet, 2 gyms. That was good. I enjoyed that. And 1 core session and a bit of mobility too. So yeah, 100%. I feel pretty good this week. Energy. I
think I would describe you as smug.
I just feel a bit, we chatted about knee problems and stuff, and my knee feels okay. I feel a bit, got a bit of a pep in my step.
Annoyingly.
I've been off coffee, so I thought the coffee was giving me a bit of a boost. But yeah, I think I've got like, I don't know, my stomach's like churning quite a lot. I'm not too sure what that is, if it's stress or something's manifesting that way. But yeah, I'm going to avoid coffee for a week and just see, not tea, so I'm not completely cutting out caffeine.
You couldn't come on the podcast, could you? We just have to call it trails.
Trails. So yeah, see how that goes for a week. But got to admit, even if the results are good, a life without coffee is, I think that's probably take a stomach troubles and have coffee. What is good, my Varga hats arrived. So I've literally gone from having no Varga hats. So Nella's kindly sent us a couple of hats out, which you haven't got yet. I've still got it.
You've got supplies of everything.
Honestly, I've got a
running shop behind you, and you go on about all this stuff. And
I've got a Varga hat. I've got some Protein Rebel. I've got some Active Root. What else have I got?
Your socks in your basket. I'm not profiting from any of this.
Well, one day it will all appear. It'll be
one
fantastic.
day it's going to be like Christmas.
A lot of Barkley marathons has been on everyone's timeline this weekend, and it's only been on my radar for about 7 years, and only this year I've realised it's not the Barclays marathons after the bank. Now I've kind of cottoned on. Every time I hear somebody talk about it, it triggers me a little bit when they say Barclays marathon.
I'm really looking forward to, because we've got Damien Hall coming on next week, and not only we can chat about all those miles we shared on the spine, of which there were
I defrosted his shoe, remember?
And you do, we're personal friends, but now we can get, which was actually our plan, we can now get some Barkley intel, because I want to know. When I was running along this mountain path today, there was a steep drop, and I was like, I bet that's what it looks like. A lot of the ups and downs are literally vertical.
Yeah.
And downs, and when it'd be fine if you had fresh legs, but can you imagine 100 miles of that? It
just looks horrendous. All the barbs and everything, the course, the books. It's just
so many people have said to me, Eddie, is it there? Is it on your bucket list? And I loved following it, but I've no interest in ever doing it.
Yeah. We'll remind you this next year when you're there with your number plate frozen head.
Number 10 trails. Can you imagine, Gary? You would die. You would be signing me up if you could get me over there, Eddie.
I'll organise your media for you. But yeah, I've had a much better week, and a few people did reach out. They could identify that it's not all rainbows and unicorns. So yeah, I'm glad to share when it's not going so well, but I'm happy to report that this week has been much better. Phil Wood got in touch for our Brew with the Coaches section, and Phil's been told he's very quaddy when he runs. Fascinating conversation with the coaches. Yeah, let's see what the coaches have to say. This week's coaching question comes from Phil Wood. Thanks, Phil. Phil is an okay runner. Again, quotations. That's Phil's words, not mine. 51-year-old, and is keen to improve before he gets to the wrong side of the hill. Phil's issue is he has been told he's very quaddy when he runs. Depending on what you read/watch on the minefield that is the interweb, some advise trying to change to a gait to be more glutey or calfy than quad dominant, as it could be more efficient and potentially quicker. Others just suggest strength training to your natural gait pattern to protect the muscle and avoid the potential issues of your natural form. What would you advise? A gentle long-term attempt to change gait, or work more on the strength aspect and work with what your mama gave you? Thanks, Phil.
I love that. I'd like that on a t-shirt. Work with what your mama.
Yeah.
Love it.
Sweet. Yeah. Thanks for your question, Phil. Yeah. What did you make of that, Russell?
Okay. So I'm going to come in hot on this one because it's a pet peeve of mine. There is a lot of information out there. It's difficult to know what to say, but a lot of Westerners, particularly, I think, can be quite lazy with form and think, I was born this way. I know how to run. I don't need to change anything. I don't know if Trish and Eddie are going to say the same, but I certainly know a lot of coaches who are out there with quite big voices who are saying, you run how you run, just keep running and it will all sort itself out. And I disagree heavily with that. I've spent a lot of time in Kenya, and I know the Ethiopians as well. They work on their form every day, every single day of their lives, maintenance, improvement, every single day. And they wouldn't do that if they didn't need to. So there's a lot you can do. And I think the main reason Westerners struggle and, like you say, become what some people call quad dominant is to do with the hips. We sit down too much in our lives. We're dormant too much in our lives. Our hips get tight, our hamstrings get tight, they also get weak. Then reversing that is a slow, hard, arduous process, and you can come up with trouble when you're trying to change things. And then so people just go, you know what, it's too hard. I won't bother. I would definitely look at stretching the hip joint. When I see the squad that I work with every Tuesday, about 9 out of 10 people, their hips are just too tight and they don't even know what that means. The hip flexor, the psoas, chronically tight. So definitely stretch that out. But then it becomes a neural thing as well. Even when you've got them stretched out and they're strong and your hamstrings are stretched out and strong, you still run in the way that you've been used to, and it becomes a habit and a pattern, a movement pattern. So mimicry really helps. In Kenya, they do lots of mimicry. They put the best runners in front. Difficult to do that here, watching the best guys run, but just trying to think, tall posture, hips up, get someone to film you, or I know you guys aren't going to like this, but treadmill with a mirror actually can be really useful, just to see, do my hips look like they're straight and that they're underneath me, or are they falling behind me? Have I got an arch in my lower back, my lumbar region there? It's a massive Western problem, particularly. If you've got your hips behind, you're going to rely on your quads, and they are skeletal muscles, so they fatigue much quicker than your core and your butt. And then you can't be a spring off the ground. You can't use that elastic tendon spring that the human body is supposed to use. We're supposed to spring off every step, not muscle. That's my opinion. There's a lot of different information out there, like you say. So good luck with it. All right, mate.
There's so much different information out there.
Yeah.
I remember going to physio once, and he had this little anecdote from physio school, and he was showing a poster of this, I think he was like multiple world champion Ironman, who had a real unusual running style. And the question was, well, the question was, what would you do to change this guy? And the instructor was like, nothing. He's obviously got an unusual running style, but he's perfectly fine as he is. So yeah, it's literally, you could Google it and get multiple different answers. But yeah, what's your thoughts, Trish?
I agree with Russell. I think form is really important. And I think it's something that we should be constantly working on. And I just think in terms of, it's really helpful in terms of holding yourself together. I think in like the, in the end stages of a race when you're hanging out, I always try to think to myself, form. And it's really hard when you're blowing out your ass to try and do that. But I think form is really important. And then again, you see a lot of runners who, I think trying to force someone to conform to a certain way of running, I don't think that's quite the way either. Like everyone has their own style as such, and I think a good example of that is you look at Paula Radcliffe. Everyone will be aware of Paula's bloody head and her arms. And I know just in terms of reading her biography and stuff, like that was they did try to kind of coach that out of her. And it just didn't work for her. So I think people are people, and we're all different at the end of the day. But I do think it's important to continuously try and work on your form. So I would say to Phil to try to continue to work on his form. Look at the key aspects. If you're very quaddy, then try and look at the key aspects of ways, like maybe look at 3 key things that you could do to improve that. And when you're doing your running, just go through, work on one of those at a time. Like if it's standing tall, stand tall. Make sure you're concentrating on that until you feel like you've nailed it. But the reality is that takes a lot of time to correct form. And when we're tired, we absolutely revert back into our natural state, which is breathing out my ass, trying to get through. So I'd say try and stay consistent, maybe look at a couple of points that you could improve and trying to incorporate that into your training. So, even when you're doing your speed sessions in particular, that's a really good opportunity to look at your form as well. So do that. Strength aspects, you're not going to get a massive change very quickly. That's the reality. It's a long-term investment. You're definitely not on anywhere near the wrong side of the hill yet. There's no reason why you can't change your form going on and on and on. So I'd say stay consistent with it. Identify a couple of key areas where you could potentially make those changes, and maybe spend, a block concentrating on that one piece, and then the next block concentrating on that next piece until you feel you've got it nailed. And it will come, and it will take time, but it's something I do it all the time. I'm constantly, every week, I'm like, form. What am I looking at this session? What am I doing? Am I standing tall? Am I snapping my arms? That sort of stuff. So keep on top of it. It will come.
Something you both touched on, and now actually as a professional yoga instructor, having done 13 days of yoga as well.
Oh, wow.
Something like yoga or Pilates, where you every day you touch into correct. We don't do it like all of us are here, like shoulders forward, touch into standing up tall. Being able to know what that actually feels like is the start of changing. You can't go and lift your knees more, or go and use your hamstrings more, because they're like, well, I am being body aware, which is something that not all of us are naturally gifted at. But something like Pilates yoga, where you have to touch in, and a lot of it is based just finding that, making sure that pelvis is in the right position. Yeah. Russell, you touched on it a little bit, getting the carriages behind your train to push. So it's not just the train at the front. All aboard, Billwood Quad Train. It's about the posterior chain, which isn't just your glutes and your hammies. It's everything from the top, back of your head, getting your head in the right position. Because if your head's too far forward, as you said, then your hips are going to stick out, and then the carriages are all, they're around the corner. So getting that posterior chain strong, maybe looking at the gym as well to strengthen that as well. And then my final thing is like hill work is a fantastic, or even just running up a hill is when your form is going to be at its most perfect. Not a hill going up at the end of the arc. That's not going to be. But out on just like an easy run when you're feeling good. If you're going up a hill, that is the best time to go, this is where I'm going to run my perfect form. So you're not adding in an extra session. You're not adding in more stuff to think about. You drop your shoulders. You imagine that you're being pulled up by a thread that is pulling you up nice and tall. You relax everything else and you push those hips and those knees forward. And you just need to do like 10 or 15 strides of that, and you'll feel like, whoop.
Bang on.
Pulling those carriages up, that I am the engine, and I've got those carriages linked into my hips, pulling them forward. Try a few steps like that. Okay, that's it. And then about it. And then when you get on the flat, try and mimic those, pushing those hips forward. But I would say start with the basics. I also should say Phil is one of my runners, and he is awesome. 51-year-old still PBing. You get this. But I love that he still wants to improve. He still thinks, where can I? He's not looking for carbon plate shoes. He's looking to, how can I improve myself? I love that. Phil. I love that, Phil. Let's see a picture of you PBing at Paris Marathon with those quads in full action.
Yeah, I want to see his quads now for sure. I'm all about quads.
I love that. Thanks, guys. And I really enjoy Brew the Coaches, because if Phil asked me, I'd be like, just run, Phil. You're fine.
Don't worry about it, Phil. Look, get a pasty. Keep rubbing that pasty on your thighs.
Oh, we're really lucky this week for our guest interview. Rebecca Cam got in touch from a race doctor's medic point of view. So it was great. Yeah, really interesting chat with Rebecca. There was a few audio issues. Zoom is great, but it has its limitations. Hopefully it's not too bad, because Rebecca had some great stuff to share. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for coming on the Tea and Trails podcast. We did this last week, and I thought Eddie and I had a little chat beforehand. We thought we'd bring it back for good, our old intro that we'd ask every guest. And it is, where are you? What's the view from your window? And have you been for a run today?
Hi, I'm actually based in Shropshire, which is quite sunny today. The view from my window is my garden and some nice trees and fields beyond, so quite lovely, and a bit of sun coming through, which is nice. No, sorry to let the side down, I have not run today.
And what's the trails like? What's the Shropshire trails like?
It's quite flat where we are. We're in quite a rural area, but then there are a few little bits of hills we can get to, particularly the South Shropshire hills are quite nice, along Mynd and places like that you may have heard of. Go and do longer efforts out there, but yeah, around here it's sort of lots of fields, lots of paths through, round field margins, that sort of thing.
That sounds lovely.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, Rebecca, not only as maybe almost right from the beginning, your running background, and how that has led into you now being a doctor, being a race doctor at the same time?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a place called Marple, and I think a previous guest of yours, Siobhan, actually is a GP either in that town or very close to there. So Marple is a town which sits really handily, sort of about 20-30 minutes away on the mainline train to Manchester, but also is not far from the Peak District as well. So sort of grew up there and enjoyed things like mountain biking and that sort of thing in the Peak District. But really, I think mainly I was a frustrated footballer, and there wasn't a lot of opportunities for football when you're sort of in the 80s and 90s when I was at school. So sort of naturally, being slim and skinny, they suggest you do running. So I sort of got into that with 800, 1500 metres cross country in the winter. And I did that sort of through secondary school, and it sort of lapsed off by the time I got to A levels and doing medicine at uni, all about the sort of play hard aspect. So work hard, play harder. No real time for sort of sports and fitness in amongst most of that, and then the same through your junior doctor years. But I picked it back up again after I qualified as a GP. I've been a doctor for 20 years now. I've been a GP since 2006. So sort of picked it back up, and mainly just for fun and just to sort of keep fit to do other things I wanted to do. So been trekking in Kilimanjaro, Atlas Mountains. I've done things like a Royal Marine Commando Challenge over Dartmoor, 30 miles, carrying lots of weight, those sorts of things. So I did fitness for those sorts of things, and then got into running a bit more. Obviously, family came along and headspace and that sort of thing. And then I've done a couple of races in the last few years. So I've done a marathon and one ultra. So I'm not sure that counts as being an ultra runner, but I've done one.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing counts. You just have to say you're on, aren't you? I don't think there's a checklist.
You're training for an ultra. That's good, you know.
Yeah, and that's it. And so this year, and obviously lockdown, then it sort of interfered again with those plans. But I've got sort of run throughout, but to no real level and to no real standard, but just for fun and headspace. And then I've got some mad aspirations to do West Highland Way this year. Rather than be the doctor, I'll hopefully be there on the start line, which will be a really interesting perspective on it.
I think that's amazing. One of our patrons, Hannah Greenley, she's a doctor, Dr. Hannah Greenley, I should say. She'd love to know what additional training you undertook or would recommend. And do you need additional insurance to be a race doctor? I think Hannah's got her eyes on becoming, but it's really interesting to know. I often see adverts like on Facebook for people, for companies looking for race medics. And actually at the Spine, there were quite a lot of junior doctors doing it, holding my feet, and then I'd be like, tell me about where do you work? What do you do? I'm just going to shut my eyes, keep talking. What's your sort of pathway into becoming a race medic?
Varying ones, but I came from general practice, so I was for a long number of years full-time GP in Wolverhampton, and wanted to sort of always had an interest in sports myself and running, and so wanted to move more into sports medicine. So I've done a fair few things. I've initially started a postgraduate diploma in sport and exercise medicine, which I, after a little break, converted into a master's. And then I've done other things, sort of qualifications in things like diagnostic ultrasound and things like that to support my musculoskeletal and sports medicine work. But to be a race medic per se, it's more about the experience that you gain. So if you're a doctor and you work in sort of a relevant speciality, so something like general practice, accident and emergency, there's not that much more you need to know or do, and it's really gained through experience at attending the races and having discussions. Obviously, I'm happy to talk to, was it Dr. Hannah, did you say? I'm happy to have a chat if there's something she particularly wants to do, or if we can accommodate her at one of our races, we'd be more than happy. So getting that hands-on experience really in a well set up race is probably how you really get into it. And then if you wanted to become more involved with sports medicine, then there would be other things like I've done to do that. And I'm still, even at my age, 44, doing exams. So I have one coming up because I'm going more into sports medicine. I've sort of did my GP exam many years ago, but now going around again and doing some formal qualifications in sports medicine as well.
What sort of things does that exam cover in sports medicine?
It's quite a wide variety of things. So it can be things like concussion during sports events, classically rugby, that sort of thing, through to more the exercise. So how do you enable people who maybe have things like diabetes to become more physically active? So it's a full spectrum, really, sports injuries through to exercise medicine as well. So helping people, particularly with physical activity, with other illnesses as well. So it's quite a broad remit. And it's so I did the part 1 exam in September, and this one is I've got to travel up to Edinburgh to actually have scenarios and be examined face to face for this one. The other part, sorry, was about insurance, wasn't it? Does she need any extra insurance? If you are a GP, then most of your insurance that covers your GP work will be extended to cover sort of race scenarios. If you're a junior doctor, there will usually be some caveat about working under some sort of supervision. And that, so whereas I can practice independently, if as a junior doctor, she may require an organised setup to be able to practice. And again, her insurance should then cover that.
I saw that at the Spine. There'd be like a lead medic who would check everything off. And then the junior doctors would be like, well, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this treatment. And if you've been running ultras, you might never have come into, hopefully very rarely come into contact with race medics. But when you start doing these super long events, your paths might cross one way or other. Just maybe it might be that the race medic pops up on course and just checks that you're moving and awake and alive, and often reassures you that you are awake and alive and are moving well. For these sort of big events like Lakeland 100 or maybe Westline Away, when does your work start as a race medic? Do you sort of meet with the team quite before the race, and sort of when does it finish? How does the sort of race pan out for you?
I suppose there's two sort of roles. There's the sort of pre-planning role, which we can talk a little bit about if that's of interest to anybody. But on the day stuff, because the West Highland Way starts hideously at 1 a.m.
Oh, it does. Oh, I hadn't thought of that from a medic point of view. I'd be like, nothing will happen till dawn. I'm staying there.
Well, that is pretty much what I do. So we meet the night before, and I tend to travel up because traveling from Shropshire as well, I've got a pension for these races miles away. So I've always got the travel to factor in. So I get there, tea time, have my tea, meet the race team, and I work very much, obviously it's a team effort, isn't it, looking after these races. So I work very closely with Sean Stone, who's the race safety officer. And so I tend to then go to bed. I've got my phone, and then I'll get up early that next morning, and I'll sort of, because again, it's a linear course, so I'll sort of wend my way up the course. Yeah. And then stopping in at various checkpoints, see how things are going. I do a bit of a stint at the second to last checkpoint. And then I aim to get to the finish not long after the sort of first few finishers have come in, because they tend to usually need the least help at the finish, or the least stuff doing to them. So I tend to get there later on, but obviously I'm on the phone, and it's not too bad phone signal wise. I can be in contact with the various checkpoints. You
said about the people at the front of the pack maybe need a little bit less attention, but last year's Lakeland 100 winner, Ali Bailey, he went pretty much straight to hospital.
Yeah, you can't be complacent at any point. But it's we do. I say we have a team there from the first finish, and sometimes that catches us out if they're obviously.
I guess the weather, the conditions are really like, if it's like balmy, not too hot, but if you've got variable too hot or too cold, then you must look at the forecast and go, we're going to need more medics, bring them in.
The year I ran the Devil of the Highlands, for example, was like, I think one of the hottest races they'd had, and that caught quite a few people out, particularly Scottish runners used to running in sort of cooler temperatures, and then it was really hot on that day. So I loved it because I'd done all my training in a hot summer sort of in England, and I thought it was great. I much prefer to run in the heat than cold and wet. But that definitely caught some people out, because you don't expect to deal with sort of extreme heat illness stuff the longer the event goes on, because people tend to just slow down. Your heat illness tends to be sort of certainly your 10Ks, half marathon distance. And certainly there's quite a lot of casualties at the end for that. So you're right, you do look at it with a bit of trepidation, particularly if it's going to be cold and wet. We know we're going to be looking after quite a lot of people at the end who are probably hypothermic.
I always think that at the London Marathon, that end of April, that people have done most of their training in the winter, and then
sometimes it's really hot, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I did it one year. Everybody was saying it was like mega hot. It was like 24 degrees, so it wasn't hot, but just hot enough to really kind of scupper quite a few people's races, actually, mine included. It didn't go that well that day. Got another Patreon question, actually, from Jonathan Zink. What's the most, we've got a couple of questions actually around this theme, but yeah, Jonathan's first is, what's the most interesting injury you have encountered on race day?
Injuries that become more interesting for the general public are probably best described as being more scary for the medics involved. But interesting things. This used to particularly be a feature when you had a race within a race for West Highland. There used to be a relay element to the race where you could enter as a team. And so those runners were on the same course, but doing much shorter stints and running much faster. So they came unstuck in more spectacular ways generally, if they fell over, for example. So we had one situation coming in, so you cannot leave in checkpoint where a runner comes in and goes, oh, someone's fallen off the trail and's got a really bad head injury. So you pile out and try and find them, and this person was running towards us. It was a bad head injury. And it was actually a depressed skull fracture, which we had to get sorted out. So it had probably fallen off the trail and hit their head. And that required, obviously, imaging and intervention at hospital. But thankfully, they were fine. And then we had someone dislocated the shoulder coming down into Kinlochleven. It was quite a bad section because it's quite a lot of downhill coming in. So again, yeah, bad shoulder dislocation. And they tended to be, as I say, running quickly, so not carrying anything with them. So when they slow down, then they can get cold really quickly and have to retrieve them. So those are the two sort of traumatic things that stick out for me.
You don't have to answer this actually, Rebecca, but is there a medics WhatsApp group with all these spectacular and gruesome injuries?
Obviously there's a debrief. It's a healthy part of being a doctor. I think we're quite well known for our sort of gallows humour and that sort of thing. And certainly, yeah, you have to debrief by chatting about things. Not necessarily a WhatsApp group, but lots of chat.
Yeah, moving on from the most spectacular injuries to common issues. And yeah, Patreon Katie Alexander asks, she'd like to know the most common issues you see during ultras and what can be done to avoid them.
Lots of common things that we see, particularly at the finish. So people who come in and have been running or moving their legs for many, many hours, as soon as they stop moving, tends to affect their blood pressure. So then they tend to collapse and faint. So that's probably a lot of our business, is people who come in really happy to have finished, stop dead, and then promptly sort of keel over. And that can happen immediately, or it can be a little bit delayed after finishing as well. So we spend quite a bit of time looking after those people, making sure they're sort of lying flat again and able to sort of eat and drink. We don't tend to do much to resuscitate them because we are worried about people being overhydrated and hyponatremia, but we do lots of sort of TLC stuff to sort of allow that person to sort of come around. In terms of preventing that, if you know that's happened to you previously, much better to try and walk a little bit. So if you sort of just try and keep moving, the natural instinct obviously is you don't want to take another step, I would imagine, but trying to keep a little bit active. And again, if you feel faint and you feel it coming on, lie down, put your legs up on a chair, so you've got a bit of blood going back to your heart and your brain where it's missing. So that's the kind of tip, that if you know that's happened before. And lots of people, that induces quite a bit of vomiting as well. So there's lots of vomit at the finish that we have to deal with as well. But yeah, it's usually that sort of sorts them out, just having a bit of time to recover.
And is hypernatremia, is that, I know I hear about quite often with road marathons, is that an issue on, say, a 100-mile, or especially on a hot day, I suppose?
Something that definitely keeps me awake the night before an ultra is thinking we might have to deal with someone who's suffering the effects of that, because when it happens, it can be quite catastrophic at one end of the spectrum. And it can be prevalent in races where temperatures are cooler. People tend to move slow. If they're moving slowly in cool weather, they tend to overdrink for the requirements of actually what the exercise is giving them. So that drink to thirst mantra is something that I would subscribe to, because you're never really going to get into a hyponatremia situation if you always sort of listen to your thirst. And again, asking what people can do to prevent it, I think I will always say as a doctor, that's the most important thing. I know certainly drinks companies and things which are selling your products to do those things will always talk about avoiding dehydration as being really important. But certainly longer ultras that take place in sort of cooler temperatures, you're actually probably more at risk, or significantly more at risk of hyponatremia and over drinking. So again, avoiding that. But it's rare. We've not dealt with someone who's been in compromised situation from hyponatremia at the end of one of the races since I've been involved with them. Prior to that, there were situations in the West Highway race where people did have to be transferred to hospital because they were having fits and that sort of thing. So when it happens, it can be very scary and catastrophic, and it needs prompt treatment. But we have a blood analyzer at the finish, so we can check what people's blood sodium levels are like, and if we've got a suspicion of that, we also have the treatment to give them. Correct that as well. So that's one instant where we would put a drip in and sort that out. So we give people high concentration to sort that out. But we've never had to do that since I've been involved. But we've got the facility for that. So it's one of those things which are really rare, but yeah, we'll still keep them awake.
I'm glad I've never had to see this side of a race. I've always been quite lucky that I'm not aware of ever having to have a chat with a medic for any kind of hydration or injury or even feet. Yeah, I imagine feet's another big potentially race finishing problem. Any tips I've got? We chatted just before we came on the mic. I think we both got quite a lot of callus on our feet from over the years. Is that a good thing? Should I be trying to get rid of that, softening the feet up, or just let them toughen up?
I think if you've got a callus, I think it's why you've got it, essentially. So if that is just naturally where you sort of bear your weight through that part of your foot, then you're probably not going to be able to sort of get rid of it. And probably getting rid of it, you're just fighting against the natural process which your body's trying to do to compensate for extra pressure. So I would probably sort of guard against the I'm going to pare it down myself, get rid of it type method. But if you know it's something that you're particularly prone to and it's a problem for you, then that's where a good sports podiatrist would be able to give you a bit of an assessment and say, yeah, it's the shoe fit or it's something we can do and we can help with that as an insole. That's the way to manage it rather than hacking bits of your feet off, I would suggest. But yeah, not a foot expert, but that, yeah, certainly we work very closely in the military with sports podiatrists who deal with these things. So yeah, look at the cause, look at shoe fit, and then beyond that, probably just keep your feet generally in good condition. Yeah, pedicures and going for baby soft feet probably doesn't. I wouldn't have thought that's counterintuitive. I think to what you're trying to do with ultramarathons, and certainly ballerinas, for example, they do a lot of foot maintenance, and I don't think they'd be going for sort of soft feet.
What about blisters? I pop everything, but should I be popping them or should I just leave them alone?
Again, that's really difficult. And again, it's how you're popping them. Sticking any old pin in them probably could introduce infection. That's always what we want to guard against. So don't make a bad situation worse. But sometimes relieving some pressure allows people to continue and, sort of getting rid of them in the best way. So the different sort of foot maintenance strategies during the race and after the race. I'm quite lucky in the sense that I generally am at the finish line and we can say, you finished, unless it's really bad, you can probably take care of it yourself now. Whereas there's lots of foot maintenance during the course, but we try, particularly on the races I'm involved in, try and be as self-sufficient as possible with feet, but more than happy to look at them at the end where there is, worries about infection or worries about how to manage them. But generally, yeah, infection is the thing you definitely want to avoid.
And is there any red flags? You're running along, maybe your mood dips or something, and you just want to self-triage yourself. Any red flags that runners could look out for, maybe to to prompt them maybe to eat or drink or take their shoes off and take a look at their feet?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? I would probably always err on the side of trying not to ignore stuff. I'd probably want to get my shoe off and have a look. And I think dealing with things in the early stages is always much better than doing another 6 or 7 miles to the checkpoint and then taking your shoes off and thinking, oh, what am I going to do with that? So yeah, even if it means sort of sitting down at the side of the trail, I would say early intervention is always best. Much easier for me to say that and actually do that when you're in the heat of the moment. But that again is what we say. And I think mood's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think, again, particularly with the drinking, don't be tempted to over drink in that situation if you don't feel thirsty at all or you don't fancy it. Your body will. Thirst is quite a strong thing, isn't it? Your body will tell you when it does need that particularly. But eating a bit's always a good idea, isn't it? Get a bit of sugar and a bit of energy. That's always a bit of a reset as well. It's just doing something different, focusing on chewing as opposed to focusing on your feet. So that's what I would say. Yeah, early intervention, always have a look. Don't be scared to take your shoe off, just have a look.
I think I ran about 20 miles with a stone in my shoe because I didn't want to take it off.
I was listening thinking I'm the other school of I'm not looking. Whatever's going on down there. I'm just also I find in an ultra I'm so stiff after so many I don't think I can get my shoe off and get it back on. So yeah.
Your feet get further and further away, don't they? As long as it goes on.
To get that shoe off, it's going to be half an hour. So, but I think I laugh that early intervention is so important. But I love the fact of just eat and chew just to take your mind off everything else anyway.
100%. You know, if you can stomach food, there's one tip I'd give. Yeah, just try and eat something. But that's a problem, isn't it? Sometimes maybe say 70, 80 miles into the race, the last thing you want to do is eat. But yeah, if you can, I would definitely eat. This is something I'm really interested in. Quite a lot of races these days, they say you can't have, say, maybe like an ibuprofen-based painkiller. What's the difference between that maybe and a paracetamol, and why the ibuprofen isn't so good for runners?
So ibuprofen falls into that classification of drugs which are anti-inflammatories, and there's a whole group of them. So other things people might have been prescribed are things like diclofenac or naproxen, things like that. They're quite similar, and they tend to affect kidney function. So we avoid them in patients, for example, who've got kidney problems generally. So what happens during an ultra is it's a stressful situation for your kidneys to be in an ultra marathon because of blood diversion away from kidneys into the muscles, essentially, because they're where the high demand is. So your kidneys are under a little bit of stress. And then if you take ibuprofen on top of that, it exacerbates that. And sort of worst case scenario for that is that it then exacerbates the effects of something like rhabdomyolysis because your kidneys are having to work hard as well as not having the blood go into them as much. They're having to work hard because your muscles are breaking down and releasing a bit more protein than they normally do. And that protein goes into the kidneys to be filtered and that puts them under pressure. So rhabdomyolysis is when that system is overwhelmed and you've got a lot of that protein coming through the kidney. And that ultimately, left unchecked, so your kidney's not working in kidney failure and needing treatment to sort of rescue that situation. And that's much more common in races where there's lots of ups, but mainly lots of downs as well. So it's downhill running, which puts the most stress on your muscles because it's that eccentric control of the muscles lengthening as they're trying to take your weight going downhill. That's what exaggerates that kidney protein issue. So it exaggerates the protein breakdown. So taking ibuprofen when you've got those things going on adds to your risk of then coming unstuck with those issues and having intervention problems. So Scottish races I'm involved in take a very hard line about it. They say that it's a sort of condition of participating is to agree that you're not going to use those medications because it is such a big deal. And certainly, we see a bit of rhabdomyolysis at West Highland Way because of the number of significant downhills that there are. I would always say to people, as a doctor, I'd much rather you just tell me that you've taken it. I'm not in the position to sort of be disqualifying or you're saying you're in contravention of the rules. I just need to treat you. So if you have taken it, just tell me. It doesn't have, it's much more important that I know and we can take it into account. And again, with the blood analyzer I mentioned at the end, we can check for kidney function and what sort of degree of renal stress you're under. As I say, most people finishing the race will not have normal kidney function. That's just part of ultra running. But ibuprofen just makes that situation a lot worse, essentially.
Oh, that's fascinating. That is. So don't go smuggling your ibuprofen in your face.
I like to feel the pain anyway. I don't want to mask it. I've worked hard to feel that 80-mile epic pain. I feel it's part of the process, and I quite like the whatever aches and pains you get because I think it keeps the brain alive as well. That you.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Come on, Gary.
I can't remember what race it was now, but I remember doing some race. I think it was just paracetamol I took, and I held off taking it for a hell of a long time. And as soon as I took it, I just thought, why the hell didn't I take this hours ago? I feel great.
Really? Did it really have that much?
Yeah, it didn't last for long, but it really did just take the edge off.
Yeah, paracetamol is safe to take because it doesn't have the same sort of renal effects. So that is okay to use. And just try and remember how many you've taken. Yeah. Because if the race is more than 24 hours, it can be difficult to keep track. So please don't take more than 8 in 24 hours. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, don't carry at the end of the race. Yeah.
Yeah, another question from Jonathan Zink, Patreon member. Now, he is an outdoor first aider and he feels it's really important for runners to carry a first aid kit. Do you do this, Eddie, when you go out? First aid kit?
Always, especially because I live in the mountains.
Oh, fantastic.
I have a little pack of, well, I won't say what's in it because let's ask Rebecca what we should have in it, or maybe she could do my checklist. I always have a first aid kit when I go skiing, when I'm running, and it's mainly for other people. I don't think I've ever first aided myself. It's nearly always I've met somebody and I'm also an outdoor first aider. And I think as outdoor people, everybody, I would recommend you do an outdoor first aid weekend certificate, because it just gives me reassurance. Bryn laughs so much. I totally digress. But I came across a unconscious child on the mountain, and he was like, the first thing you said was, "It's okay, I'm a first aider." I was like, I wanted to reassure him that I wasn't just going to do something. But if you do come across an accident, it does give you a little tool, a little armory of that. You do know the basics. You're not administrating anything really medical. You're just helping the person before somebody like Rebecca turns up, reassurance and keeping them warm, etc. So yes, I always carry a little pack of first aid stuff. But
and what would you, Rebecca, what would you keep in your? I'm not going to ask you. I don't want to throw you under a bus. I'm not going to ask you if you carry a first aid kit. But yeah, if you did, what would be in your first aid kit?
In terms of whether or not I carry one, I always carry sort of basic stuff. And I think as a bare minimum, there's a fair bit you can do if you can control a bit of bleeding. Because think about the serious things that I've just talked about. Someone who's bleeding from a head wound, if you've got something you can put on that, so some sort of gauze, pads, something that's not going to stick to it, but just, absorb blood, and then some tape or some other sort of dressings, sticky dressings, but certainly some sort of padding and something to sort of be able to cover wounds or stop bleeding, I think is probably the most important thing in terms of actual first aid intervention. But what a lot of people come unstuck with is the fact that although the injury itself is not serious, the fact that they're then sat there waiting for recovery is a big issue. So foil blanket is just a minimum. I think all runners, if they, because they're so light, you can just stick it in a pocket of your vest or whatever. That is probably the single biggest thing. And I think it would be unwise to go anywhere remote or where you've got a chance of spending some time sat still before being recovered. If you can minimise the problems you can get with that, that's much more significant probably than sprained ankle, which once you get down off the hill and someone x-rays it and sorts it out, there's not too much to that. But what's going to make you feel really unwell and horrible in the meantime is the fact that you're sat there really cold. So yeah, foil blanket, something to do minor cuts, wounds, bleeding, and then sort of personal preference really, whether or not you want to go to the extent of carrying a pair of gloves and that sort of things to protect yourself as well. But yeah, I usually take some dressings, bit of some swabs to stop bleeding, a bit of tape, and that's probably all I would carry.
You have to buy for Dragon's Back, don't you? Like a survival bag now. They don't let you.
I've ordered it, yeah.
Yeah, and I always carry that now because if the weather comes in a mountain, especially the foil blanket, it actually is quite easy to blow away as well. Yeah. And so a survival bag is actually, you can get the casualty and yourself if needed, because it's yourself as well that when you stop to look after somebody, you can end up being quite cold and then getting into shock a little bit. The other thing I always have in my little first aid pack is like a Mars bar or something like that I won't eat, and it's probably like 3 years out of date, but in a desperate situation, that if your casualty or you end up being out much longer, you've got that 500 calories. If somebody is, you need to have a little bit of sugar for somebody as well, or you're trying to get a kid to ski home and they don't want to.
I feel bad. Local runs, yeah, I don't really take anything.
No,
100% on them.
I think you're all right round Castle Eden, aren't you? But
you never know. But
you're right. You never know.
I just mentioned that I don't carry a first aid kit on a local run. And this came after doing a first aid course, actually. I never leave the house. Someone's going to call me out now, but I'm pretty sure I never go for a run without my phone, mainly in case I come across somebody else who could have had a cardiac arrest or something pretty serious. And I need, I can't really manage myself if that situation happened to me, but somebody else, yeah, maybe I could help. Is there anything that you would say to runners? Yeah, please don't leave the home without that.
Yeah, I would always run with my phone. I just think that's I also think maybe that's part of being a woman as well. You don't want to get yourself into a situation you can't get back out of. So yeah, I would always say a phone. I think as Eddie says, you sort of tailor the kit according to the scenario. So certainly when I go hill walking, I've got a bigger bag. Yeah, definitely you take sort of shelter and you get lots of those little packed down shelters now that you can sort of put round more than one or two people and the things like that. But I think a phone's the minimum. Whistle is the other thing. That's old school. If you're up somewhere, Snowdon or whatever, and you've got people trying to make their way through the mist to find you without mobile phone signal, a whistle is perfect in those situations, isn't it? You're not going to, you know. So I think that. I'm sure a lot of people, maybe they just cut it straight off if it gets attached to they buy a vest with one attached. I hope they don't try and save 2 grams by cutting them off, but, you know, leave it on there and, you know, you never know. It's one of those, isn't it? So take it 2 or 3 grams.
Well, I'll leave that on because that is pretty much on 100% of kit check is a whistle. So just the fact that it's already on my vest, it's like brilliant. I don't have to worry about that.
It's when you have to find it at kit check when they go, and you're like, oh, I've seen it every run. I think, oh, that's that whistle that bangs against my chest, and then you can't find it when you actually need it. We've talked a lot about pre-race, maybe some race medical emergencies as well. But one of our other patrons, Paul Whiteleg, wants to know there's a lot of information about how to train for ultras, but not much about how to recover before training for your next one. Any tips from a factual medical point of view and not from internet adverts and influencers? Paul says his timeline is littered with ice bath and recovery trousers adverts. And I find this really interesting too, because there is very little, and yes, he's right, there's very little about recovery written from people having actually done medical studies on running these long distances, and then what happened, the breakdown of what happens to the body and how long it takes to then recover. But also it's very individual, isn't it? So you can see some people, and I think that's where a lot of people fall down, because they see people back on Strava 5 days after a massive race running, and they think, well, I should be the same as well. So any top tips or tricks from a medical point of view about recovering from ultras?
I think it's fair to say evidence-based for a lot of things that we like to sort of cling on to as strategies probably is lacking. So poor evidence-based for a lot of these interventions is what I would say. There'll be some studies which show some effect in some situations, and it's how we extrapolate those effects to the individual. So, for example, there has been studies at Western States where they looked at, Western States Ultra in America, where they looked at whether or not having a massage afterwards can help recovery. So they actually did that in their bid to do a formalised study to get some evidence. And lo and behold, they found, makes you feel good, probably doesn't make any difference. Okay, so the making you feel good bit could be important now, okay? So psychological recovery from these things is really important and sort of overlooked. So I think interventions which either make you feel good or better, generally, it doesn't really matter how they work. I guess that placebo effect is, we're sentient human beings. We can't help our emotions are going to interact with all of these things. So if it makes you feel better, there's no harm to it, then crack on. But yeah, if you're asking me, is the definite evidence that if you submerge yourself in ice cold water for 15 minutes after a run, no, the evidence isn't there. And certainly after strength activity, they think that's damaging now. So it's a minefield, but certainly in compression garments, pneumatic trousers, and all those sorts of things, you will find some evidence in some situations, but who's going to have tested that after something like, a multi-day European race going up and down lots and lots of mountains? And also recovery, we know, is going to be affected, as you say, individually, so many different factors. Women, for example, hardly any studies take place on women. So women at different stages of the menstrual cycle, how's their recovery? No one, you start to go into it and you think it's very easy to test things where you stick people on a watt bike in a controlled lab environment and then stick them in cold water afterwards. It's very difficult to do those studies when you've actually come to the end of an ultra, and then you start to inflict various treatments on people afterwards. So real world application of these things is really difficult. So I think keep it simple and focus on things that make you feel better mentally, sleep, nutrition. And there's good evidence for sleep and nutrition, isn't there? So we know we should be replacing protein, carbs when we finish training, when we finish racing. So stick to the things which have good evidence, and then other things that you fancy and that make you feel better.
I got quite frustrated after the spine of how long it took me if you listen back to the episodes every week, I'm like, I'm still tired. But I think keeping it simple was the biggest thing I learned. Like, just keep eating, keep sleeping. And I love that. Like, do stuff that makes you feel good, that isn't, try not to raise this. Because every time I exercised, I'd want to exercise, but then I would feel terror. It would be like a sort of like allergic response to exercise. My body would go, oh, no, please, no, we're not going to do that again. So I think almost maybe, Paul, get some other stuff up on your Instagram timeline by searching up other stuff too.
Sounds like we've got a similar algorithm, Paul. I've got loads of those Normatec
old man aches and pain algorithm.
But yeah, I was never a fan of ice baths, so I'm glad.
But I think find other stuff that makes you feel good, like go and meet friends and do stuff you never normally get to do. So you get a little bit of a hormone lift, don't you, from like chatting and laughing and watching films and eating chocolate, and find other ways to get that high that's not exercise based, and also be super patient with your recovery as well.
Yeah, because there's different levels of recovery, isn't there, as well? There's like aches and pains going away, but then also that functional recovery. And if they have done states after this trial they did after Western States, they looked at people's actual functional recovery. So even after they felt better, they put them on a time trial and still they couldn't perform to that level. So there's a big difference. And it just, give yourself time and rebuild. And everyone will be individual, and don't necessarily expect to recover the same way after each event that you do as well.
Yeah.
Lots of things happen that you're just not aware of.
Rebecca, what's coming up next for you, both racing wise? I know you mentioned West Highland Way a bit earlier on. Racing wise, both individually and as a medic on course. What does the year look like?
So Highland Fling this year has been cancelled, so it's back next year. So that's the other race. So I'm sort of race medical director or race doctor for Highland Fling and West Highland Way. So West Highland Way, I actually won't be there either. So not much actual medicing for me this year, because hopefully if I remain uninjured, I'll be on the start line as a runner rather than a doctor. And then some involvement sort of in the planning stages of potential involvement for Lakeland races as well in July. So they've got a event medical team who provide on the day sort of race cover. So I've been involved a little bit more with the sort of background planning, which is something we've not talked about. But the other aspect of my role as sort of race medical director is looking at entries to the race for people who've got sort of other medical conditions. And you might have noticed from this year's Lakeland entry, there were some medical questions on there about such a medical history. So I'm involved sort of behind the scenes to do with that, but not necessarily a big role on race day for that. And then, that'll be depending if I can walk by then as well after West Highland Way. But I'll be up there at the weekend, and obviously, there's some involvement, but it's sort of to be confirmed really the extent of that, given the fact they've got, like I say, that medical cover already. And then, I'll just see how I feel the rest of the year. So hopefully I want to continue on. If I can get through West Highland, I want to be able to continue and maybe do some events next year, but nothing planned. Life's busy. You've got this exam coming up as well. So
Would you like to go and race medic out in some more sort of like foreign climates, out in perhaps colder climates? Is that something that you'd like to do?
Yeah, it would be nice to expand. And I'd be, if anyone wants to tap me up and invite me along to any races, that would be great. Always looking for opportunities. I'm just about to do at the end of April a sort of wilderness position course as well, which looks at a lot of sort of remote and extreme wilderness conditions. So that's good. So just always adding to experience and qualifications for that as well. So that's coming up as well. So I'll be doing that at the end of April. So anyone wants to invite me, I'll all that was considered. Yeah.
That sounds exciting.
Before we go on to the quick five, I just wanted to say thank you to you and to any medics who might be listening to this who volunteered their time, because Gary says he's never come into contact with race medics really in races. That's because he doesn't push himself to the extremes that I do. And I've come into contact with race medics many, many times because I've broken myself at many events during...
I think I just managed myself really well, Eddie.
Maybe so I just want to say a big thank you to you, Rebecca, and all the other race medics that might be listening to this, to say thank you for giving up your time. Many times I've been helped by race medics who've actually, made I will carry on until I drop dead. But they've given me the reassurance to carry on or help me to carry on. And I'm sure people will be in the same situation, that they've had an experience where they've needed a race medic who might have, they might have had to pull them out of the race, but they have done so with, the good grace and reassured them and maybe helped them if they've had to go to the hospital, or reunited them with loved ones. And always a very kind, I've never had such kindness and reassurance as I have from race medics. They are such a calm and positive experience when you're perhaps at your lowest point during some of these terrible races that we put ourselves through. So if you're listening in, race medic, thank you. And thank you, Rebecca, for giving up your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Not only today, but also on the race course, because we couldn't do it without you.
Yeah.
Do it without you.
And like myself, you might not be aware that the medics are there, but it's great to know they are. And hopefully I see you at the Lakeland 100, but not in a working capacity.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, before we let you go, we've got 6 questions again, and I'm not too sure this first question. I didn't do this first question, but if you did have a favourite medical emergency, what would it be?
It was sort of like, what's the thing? Maybe when you're as a GP with your GP hat on, what do you really enjoy when someone comes in and goes, "Oh, I've got this big pimple that needs squeezing"?
A baker's cyst.
Yeah, that is really hard. I would say probably not things related to pus and that sort of thing. I had a very bad experience as a junior doctor when I was being taught how to lance a sebaceous cyst. And the supervising senior house officer at the time did not tell me to expect the stuff to come out under such pressure. And it obviously came out and just went all over me. So I tend to avoid those types of things. And yeah, whilst they obviously left themselves stupid in the corner. So probably not that. But yeah, I think dealing with anything where you have an immediate sort of improvement to a patient's great. So anything you can do, an intervention. So yeah, you do get a lot of satisfaction from a job well done, but I can't pin it down to one single event.
It must be amazing on a race. I saw this at the spine race. You'd see people coming in looking absolutely destroyed, and then a few hours later, you'd see them jogging off into the darkness, and it was just like, how the hell did I just witness that?
No, that's it. And it's a privilege. We do it because we love it, and it's the whole element of human endeavour that I love. Helping people do amazing things. But there's nothing better than that, really. If I can use my medical background to help that, that's a great privilege. Yeah.
Is there anything that still makes you squeamish?
I'm not great with sputum. Sputum pots, again, because being a junior doctor on a respiratory ward, people had to obviously, spit out their sputum into a pot for you to look at so you could see if it was infected or not. That I could live without.
Yeah, I think we don't need to, none of us need that in our lives, do we?
Eddie's race motto is death or morphine. Is it best to rest or run it off? I think there's a phrase, isn't there? If the bone ain't showing, keep on going. Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that is a tricky one. That is different situations. You carry on, different situations. You probably need to stop. Like, don't run on a stress fracture. It's just going to get worse. So things like that, you probably say you can't run off. But yeah, things like tendons that like to be worked, like to be loaded. Yeah, you crack on, and rest is a bad thing for them. So choose your situation on that. Yeah. But we've had people finish with broken ankles at West Island.
Do you find it very hard still? Probably you're not face to face as much as you were maybe when you started being a race medic. Do you find it very hard to tell people to stop? Is that quite a difficult conversation when you know that someone's desperate to carry on?
It can be, but I just think most people, it's how you tackle that conversation. And I think most people have a reasonable respect for the environment that they're in as well, that they know once they leave the safety of that little checkpoint, which might be in the nearest area of civilization for many miles, they know that if it goes pear-shaped, it will go, potentially with catastrophic consequences. So generally, it's a hard conversation, but generally there's that understanding that actually, that they're telling me for the right reasons. People where we've had to pull them because we think they've got actively developing rhabdomyolysis and things like that. It's not great, but they accept that. But yeah, most of the things I deal with, they've already finished, which does help.
I know if a medic said to me, "You've got to stop," I would stop. Gary, would you?
Oh yeah, 100%. I respect
that.
Yeah.
So
we'd be quite happy actually.
You have the conversation, and you hope they're taking it in the right spirit. I will do my best I'm a runner myself. I know how important and how desperate you are to finish. It's the once, sometimes these races are once in a lifetime. And I think we do what we can, but if we're saying, your wee looks like Coca-Cola, please stop, you'd hope that they know we're telling you for the right reason.
Probably deep down, if I was ever in that situation, I'd be probably just waiting for somebody to tell me to stop as opposed to me make the decision. That'd be quite nice.
That's it. Permission to stop is a good thing.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes I'd like that permission.
Yeah, Eddie and I have talked quite a lot recently on the podcast about heart rate variability. Do you track your heart rate variability?
I do. I do wear a chest strap for training, so I know sort of what zones I'm training in and all that sort of stuff. So I use heart rate. Variability is an interesting one. I think, Eddie, you mentioned it previous podcast about not returning to its usual after spine, and I think it's certainly something that is utilised for recovery tracking and monitoring as well. So yeah, I've probably not done enough events for it to be that sort of, necessary for somebody like me and the speeds I run at. But yes, heart rate's a really sort of useful tool, and it's a simple thing to be able to use as well. And variability, if it's not returning to where it is, shows that you've probably not rested or recovered.
I'm heavily invested in it. I love it. I'm not too sure, to be honest, how accurate it is. I just use the Garmin device, and I think it does the variability during the night when I'm asleep. I think that's when it gathers its data. But yeah, it did track a period, I think November to December. I was feeling rotten. Then when I look back on it retrospectively, it was all there in the reds and the oranges. That's it. I think with Garmin, it just literally breaks it down to red, orange, green. There's not really loads of data past that. But yeah, I really love it. Guilty DV pleasure, ER or Grey's Anatomy or something else?
ER, because that's like from child. That's like my teenage years, and
how good was
the
it?
George Clooney days, and I'd definitely go for that. That woman in Grey's Anatomy is slightly irritating. So
her lips just got bigger and bigger.
I know. So I think, ER every day.
ER in its pinnacle with George Clooney, and who is the other guy?
The one who really sadly died of a brain tumour. Yes. Mark Green.
He was Goose in Top Gun, wasn't he?
He was Goose, that's it. Yeah, but I don't know the actor's name. That's awful.
That was it was such a good story. But also the medical emergencies were so real as well. They weren't scared to put the budget on the blood, were they? Blood and the guts and everything. Oh my gosh, yeah. I think we used to have like a double. Was it on Wednesday night? It used to be a double ER, and I think you'd probably watch it again. Right?
Can you imagine someone from America watched Casualty or Holy City? Just thought, what the hell is this, bro?
I'd be so disappointed.
Okay, right. Yeah, I did give you a little bit of a heads up on this last question. But yeah, every week we share the show on Instagram, and you get to choose the music for your Instagram story. What's it going to be, Rebecca?
I did put some thought into this, and the first thought I had was when I've done quite a lot of rugby pitch side cover as well, and when I was medic for Coventry Rugby Club, they had a really inappropriate soundtrack to go out on the pitch, and I love Marvin Gaye. But their song to go out, so like an activation track, was "Let's Get It On," and I thought that would be brilliant, but it's not appropriate. So it has that song, but bizarre reasons. So that was my only sort of sporting one I could go to, but I felt not appropriate. So along the same sort of lines, I'd go for something by Nina Simone. So something like "I Ain't Got No, I Got Life," because that is it's a bit medical as well, because she lists lots of different body parts in that song, if you know it at all, or "Feeling Good," something like that.
Okay.
Something by Nina Simone would be great. So yeah, I love that sort of
See what I can do. And if not, Robbie Williams will suffice. Gary's he's now taken to me to message me the music on a Friday morning just to make sure that
that'll control Rebecca, but leave her to her own devices.
Rogue with a Take That, good old Take That anthem.
Well, thanks for your time today, and thanks, like Eddie said earlier, thanks to all the medics out there on course. I've actually learned some stuff today, which is great. I do like that with our podcast. And again, I shouldn't be gauging it. This shouldn't be a topic where I've got achy cheeks, but yeah, I've enjoyed it. I've got achy cheeks.
Really, no, we've had a lot of smiles considering it's quite a serious topic. And if you're listening to this and you're not, you've had perhaps your first aid certificate has lapsed, or you've never done a first aid certificate. I would recommend doing an outdoor one. I always find I've done hundreds over my career, and the outdoor ones are a lot more fun. I know you shouldn't see the first aid certificate as being a fun weekend, but I did one on skis, the last one I did, and it was not only was it more relatable because it was obviously situations we're going to be in, but being outside in your sort of natural environment made it a little bit more interesting than sitting in a classroom as well. So if you haven't got a first aid certificate, maybe this has prompted you to free up the diary a little bit and go and get yourself qualified, because you never know when you're going to perhaps play a role in helping or even saving somebody that you might come across on the trails. Thank you so much, Rebecca. What a wonderful way to start the week. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming on the podcast. And thanks to everyone who's part of the medical support at these races. We couldn't do them without. And these people are volunteers giving up their time to support us on these crazy endeavors and often keeping us safe. So thank you to anybody who has, ever patched me back up. There's quite a few. There's probably a list. Or been patched up, a patcher-upper or been patched up. We are very grateful.
Tales from the Trails, and first thing I always like to do is head over to Strava. And again, thanks to everybody who connects with us over there. Big miles this week. Yeah, we topped 100, and there's a little bit of controversy last week with the mileage. So Giacomo won it, but I think I can't remember the chap who did actually top the charts, but he must have uploaded his run after Sunday evening, and then obviously Strava backdated. So if anybody looks on the Strava previous leaderboard,
I think, it just has to go when you go in and check it. You are the Strava god.
Nice to see we broke the 100 miles this week, and Hem ran it, with 102.6 miles. Oh my goodness me. And Sarah Perry again, over 20 hours of exercise, 20 hours, 23 minutes and 49 seconds. And again, she tops the elevation charts with 17,841 feet. Very impressive, everybody, and super consistent, Sarah. Well done. Helen Stokes got in touch, and she mentioned the Mercia Fell Runners Club. They've got a novice fell race, which I thought was an awesome idea. So if you ever thought about entering a fell race, but you just don't have the nerves to press the enter button, then check out our Facebook group. There is a post on there, and it takes you to SI entries. I think that's great, all about inclusivity. So if anybody... It can be quite daunting, I think, when you say the word fell race. It's like, oh my goodness me, is that for me? But as we all know, I know from cross country, fell racing and trail races, they're very welcoming and inclusive bunch.
This weekend also, we've got the Lee Valley 50K run by Camino Ultra. Starts at Welwyn Garden City and takes you all the way to Hackney Wick. I've checked, you can even sign up on the day. Starts at 9 a.m. Great way to get your long run in. See a different part of London if you're based that way, and support a local race. And I've heard great reports about some nice cake at the end as well, which don't make most of us. Support your local races, guys. Let's get it out there. We've had a few shouts out for, if people would like us to give a shout out for races as well, just send Gary an email, because if you send it on via too many social media platforms, he gets bird anxiety. And then he copies and pastes it into our spreadsheet, and then he can't remember where he's got it. And honestly, it takes about 45 minutes.
Where's the problem?
I've done the ironing. I've had a drink, fed the dogs, and he's going, I can't find where that post is.
I love people reaching out, but when it comes from, say, 4 or 5 different angles, then I do struggle to manage it all. So if you do want to get in touch to shine a light on a race or anything, send it in to hello@teaandtrails.com. And there is
just send it to me. I'm a woman.
You can send it already, Talking about local races and people getting in touch with us, Lee Gillam got in touch, and he mentioned Orion Trail events. Now, they've got loads of different races all on the Cornish coast. From what I understand, they're a bit of a startup, and they did have to cancel one of their races. So if you're local to those guys down the southwest coast, then check out Orion events. It looks awesome, and we know about all this from the Arc of Attrition. Lots of images shared over on social media, so I'm pretty sure that'll be a stunning place to run and support a new setup. oriontrailevents.co.uk. time to announce our much anticipated Protein Rebel competition. And yeah, we've got 2 competition winners.
It's like the Oscars. We just need Hugh Grant. Well, you're a bit like Hugh Grant, indifferent.
As a scrotum. That's what he said.
I'm like the one that's moisturised for years, and you are scrotum.
A scrotum.
I heard some people saying that Hugh Grant basically could go 2 ways now and just carry on aging with grace and letting it all. Or
he doesn't care, does he?
I love that. I prefer him as he gets older. I think he gets. I like a man with a story, an adventure on his face.
I would hate to see Hugh Grant in 5 years' time with plump lips and a stretched face. Yeah. Anyway,
back to the competition.
So up for grabs were 4 tins of the marine collagen, which is good because that is enough to find out if you personally feel the benefits. And those 25 of their Maple Ignite energy gels. And the winner of the marine collagen is Katie Grant.
Oh, is it me?
Yeah.
My announcement. We would not be good at the Oscars ceremony, or maybe we would. And the winner of the gels is Mark Thacker. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone. I didn't win. So if you're disappointed, I'm alongside you.
I saw you on there, deleted you off the list.
Stop it. Do you remember before that, there used to be like when you used to enter stuff on the back of cereal packets and stuff, it used to be like no friends and family allowed to.
Well, I know. I see I'm kind of friends with quite a few of our community, so I do see them popping up there, people I know.
Yeah, I'm not with anybody, so that's the way it works, isn't it? If you were a little bit less friendly.
It is completely random though, folks. Don't think we're...
It was random. Gary shut his eyes and I watched and then said, stop. It was very high tech.
Yeah. Well, it was such good podcast content last time we did a competition. I thought we needed to do all of that.
Perhaps we should just make a separate YouTube video of us doing the competition, and people, in a really boring moment could actually see how long and then how much inane discussion goes on. Oh, did you pick? No, I'm going to pick. No, wait, you do that. No, we're going to do that.
No, I watched the Spine Volunteers Lottery, and that wasn't exactly good YouTube content.
And you didn't, I guess you haven't got a place because you would, what is it for a place?
Yeah. I think there's quite a few people got pulled out of the hat. And I'm pretty sure you can pick exactly what you want to do. So if...
Get a place that would have made my life.
I didn't once think, I wish I was doing that race.
What would happen if you got a place? Because you had to take Winter Spine full distance, or you wouldn't really be welcome.
I don't know what I'd do. I'm quite glad though now potentially I can be volunteering again at Middleton. I need to check. Hopefully my wife's working. Yeah. Hopefully the shift patterns allow me to go away for a few days. If they do, then yeah, I will be asking to help out again up at Middleton. But yeah, Katie and Mark, reach out to us and to claim your prize. And then we'll connect you with the guys up at Protein Rebel and get your bits and bobs off to you.
Lucky devils. Some reviews popping up left, right and centre here. I know I'm not meant to read the Daily Mail comments, but I did go in and have a look at a couple of them.
Oh, Eddie.
No, don't read comments about don't do it, Eddie. Don't do it. I take it all so personally. Put myself out there for you guys. Mountains and Whiskey, great running banter, excellent chat that inspires and entertains. Love Gary fitting in any mention of Bob Graham, which you have not done for quite a few because Dragon's Back's taken over.
Dragon's Back race, all consumed.
Eddie's elite obsession with the spine. I know, but is it slightly less? Is it slightly off the
I think
front?
you have to be obsessed with a race like that, don't you?
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I will try and move on. I'm a Brit who listens from over in the USA. US of A. Oh, I've missed a chance there with my accent. And now this is one of my favourites to feel in touch with home, and I look forward to listening while I train for my BGR. I hope to do in September.
Awesome. Best have a look with that.
I always think it's a lovely month to do a challenge.
I don't think so. My first attempt is September. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies when someone says September.
Let's go for August.
It's going to be super tricky actually, because obviously traveling from the USA, you really can't just go, you know what, I'm not going to do it this weekend. I'm going to do it next weekend. The weather's much better.
Sure. Yeah, that's going to be tricky.
I'd like to read out Witty 1985's review. Great podcast. A running club buddy directed me to the podcast, and it's the best trail running podcast I have ever heard. Love
He's
the
only
chat.
listened to one, but it's the best one.
I'm not too sure how many trail running podcasts there are. Love the chat and the information right up my street or trail. Can't wait for Gary's Dragons Back journey as I'm looking to enter in 2024. Keep up the great work, guys. Awesome. Oh, well, yeah, hopefully I can pass on some wisdom from my journey and hopefully a successful race experience. Okay, we're getting to the end of the show now, Eddie. What have you got coming up?
I've got something called winter fatigue. We got one of the kids' reports back this week. Strange to get a report midterm. But anyway, don't try and explain the French education system, but you get the kids report and then you get the class report, which I think is a really good idea because you can see how your child is doing in relative to like the class. And of course, because my kids are in the sports class, it's nearly always, there is a lot of noise. There's a lot of chatter. There's not enough focus. But if you put these crazy kids all together in one class, diluting it. Anyway, the maths teacher said that there was a lot of winter fatigue because these poor children are out skiing for 20 hours. And then they get sent to school for 2 hours in the afternoon. They've been skiing all morning. What if any of ever been out like in the fells or the mountains? You get back in that warm car. What's the first thing you do? Is you want to go to sleep,
Exactly,
don't you?
Yeah.
Especially in a maths lesson. Anyway, I feel like that. We've got about 2 or 3 more weeks of the kids doing skiing, and I feel I'm done. The snow's been so bad that my ski, because I can't ski as much as I'd like to, got a bit bitter and twisted about the whole situation. And they're really tired. This weekend they're all racing. And it's just a lot of emotional, a lot of sorting of stuff. I'm just done with it, Gary. I'm done with it. It's been going on since the beginning of December, every weekend, up at 6. I know I'm whining. But it's life, isn't it? So we've got another weekend of that. But Eddie's going to take control this week. I'm going to get my training. So for the spine, I was so focused and it came first and it came before a lot of family stuff as well. Bryn handled a lot of the family load around Christmas time and I went out and did a lot. And I just feel for this training block, I can't do that again. I don't feel there's been enough time between the last training block and this training block for my training to be at the front of center. So I'm trying to manage it so that it doesn't impact on family time on the weekends, which is tricky, but I need to get a grip then. I need to get a grip and actually get my training done during the week and not to be a fanny and not do it. So I'm going to be more organized, get it done. I started the week off well with a lovely middle-ish long run to get the legs moving. I'm going to do, last week I did 6 by 3 minutes. So this week, tomorrow I have got a little bit of a flat path that I saw is snow free. So I'm going to do my 3 minutes outside.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep the same sort of pace, but I'm going to do 8. I did 6 last week and that was really easy, 6 by 3 minutes. I'm going to do 8.
You need to run faster.
You can't run faster. Like there is no speed in my old legs at the moment. So I need to so I'm going to do 8, maybe 10, see how I feel. I'm going to keep it simple. This is what I'm warbling around to. I'm going to do the same sessions. So I'm going to do 3 minutes. I'm going to do the 5-minute hill reps. I'm going to do the 10-mile steady run that I've done twice now. And as we said, 10 miles is a long way to
Any
steady
strides?
run. Maybe a few strides. Maybe a few strides and a long run. I'm going to keep it so there's not too much brain that I need to just keep it simple, just tick off those sessions and progress them as we go, rather than having to think, oh, okay, what should I do this week? I'm just going to keep it simple, get it done, tick it off. Don't think, just do. That is what I've been saying for myself for the last few weeks, as my legs are not wanting to do anything other than watch. What is it I've got obsessed with? Love is Blind. Oh my God, Gary.
Sounds dreadful. I mean, it sounds brilliant.
You would hate it.
Have you watched Below Deck? That is classic.
Oh my God, have I watched it? I've watched it. Bryn and I, we've gone so far into Below Deck. We're now on Below Deck Adventure. Oh. I bet not many people have found that one. And when I say adventure, we often go, this isn't really adventure, is it? But they're in Norway and they all sorts of things anyway. I think Below Deck is the best late night, absolute rubbish viewing, but I'm there for it. I'm not judgy. I'm there for it.
That's why I like it, because I judge these people.
We judge them, but don't judge my view. What about you?
I have got, so the threshold run, it increases. I think last week I said it was going to be a 20-minute threshold run, but I didn't do it because of my 2020-20s. Well, this week's a 30-minute threshold run, so I might do that if I can recruit some assistance with it. The other sessions are some 1K reps. I'm not too sure of how many in the workout, but then there is another one which I do think, I quite like the idea of this. It's a bit of a medium long run, but with 6 mile of it at marathon pace effort, so in that zone 3. So
I've been doing I've done 2 lots of like that 10-mile thing I just mentioned, zone 3, which is not our comfort zone as ultra runners, is it? It's like we're quite happy to do some 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5-minute reps, or a nice long run, but in between, which is a long time to
for 6 mile at that effort. That's
ask yourself some questions. You actually have to focus.
I just got to try and think of a course, a route, because I don't want it to be, say, down the Dean, because when you're going down the hill, you'll be going back into zone 2 and 1, and it'd be quite easy to get into zone 4 when you're going uphill. So I need to try and find, and I don't want too many road crossings. So I do like the idea of it, actually. Hopefully also a trip to the lakes. I really want to do that Scarfell Pike recce that we did, goodness me, it could be a month ago now. And then also incorporate Old Man of Coniston too. So it'll be 2 out and backs to Scarfell and then out and back to Old Man. That's going to be, wowzers, that'll be a big day of climbing, going up those 2 peaks. And a lot of miles too, maybe even 20 miles. So good trails, scree slopes and bogs, the whole shebang. I can't wait for that.
Get those deck shells bought before you get out there.
Yeah,
quick turnaround that Centurion store. Press order. They'll be with you. They'll be with you by lunchtime. If I get a few little updates, James likes a little, someone's bought this or someone's bought that.
Awesome. Oh, it's brilliant day. I love it. And then, but the most important thing is I need to save this bird.
Let's all pray for the bird. Maybe just update us later let's hope the story ends happily. If
I was crushing it on social media, I'd have all cameras set up. I'd do the journey, the story, and then hopefully the happy ending. But no, that's not going to happen. Thanks for listening, everybody, and thanks to our partners and Patreons. One last favour, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share. That will be it. And if you're on the fence of becoming a Patreon, I'd just like to read out, you can get Protein Rebel discount, you can get Vela Forte discount, you get Outdoor Active discount, Centurion Running Store discount, sports shoes discount. Anybody else? So if you're thinking, what's this Patreon all about? Is it worth my £3 plus VAT a month? Then I think it is. And
I think the biggest thing is you get to hear you and I, Gary, investing in our journey, and also hopefully making you feel a bit better about your journey as we mess everything up.
Yeah, as we stumble.
Gary kills birds. That's it for another week. Thanks for listening or watching, everyone. Stay safe on the trail. Run wise, run well. Don't overdo it. If you're sick, take a rest day. It's always better to be 5% under instead of 1% overcooked. Make sure you always refuel with lots of tea or whatever beverage we take your fancy. See if you can do 4 cups of tea before you do the school run. Let's see. It's a challenge.
That could be our next competition.
My name is Edwina Sutton.
And I'm Gary Thwaites.
I said Edwina's formal ending of the show today. That was episode 15 of Tea and Trails.